And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, or at least we hope it will become a great day, despite the chaos, confusion, and contradictions that are surrounding right now the Iran war in headlines like this. The Washington Post reports Trump's statements on Iran increasingly contradict each other. They're your contradictions. The president has made conflicting statements on questions both large and small related to the war. Or the Wall Street Journal, another ideological perspective, certainly. The Wall Street Journal reports U.S. forces board tanker as Iran's mixed signals cast uncertainty over talks. And then the New York Times, the other big national newspaper, they have a headline that says ceasefire nears end, and it's unclear if peace talks will resume. What is clear from the New York Times is they're reporting that Vice President J.D. Vance was supposed to leave early this morning to travel to Pakistan. Remember that? We reported on that yesterday, but his departure has been delayed. Why? He's staying in Washington to attend additional policy meetings at the White House, a White House official said. This is all amazing. The New York Times is also reporting the ceasefire nears an end, and it's unclear if peace talks will resume. And they are reporting that Iran has still not publicly confirmed that it will even send a delegation to attend peace talks in Islamabad. Pakistani officials in Islamabad said this evening, and the time locally there, that, quote, decision from Iran to attend the talks before the end of the 2-week ceasefire is critical. The 2-week ceasefire is over at some point tomorrow. Pakistan's information minister Ataullah Tarar said in a social media post. And meanwhile, the Dispatch is reporting that President Donald Trump continued to apply public pressure on Iran, telling Bloomberg on a Monday, that's yesterday, that it is highly unlikely that he will extend the ceasefire, which he noted ends on Wednesday evening, Eastern Time. Trump told PBS News that once the ceasefire expires, then lots of bombs start going off. What, they're on timers? He told the New York Post that a U.S. delegation was en route to Islamabad for another round of Pakistani-mediated talks. Iran has indicated it will not participate. The Iranian foreign minister spokesman, Esmail Baghai, did not share whether Iran planned to even attend the Islamabad talks, describing American officials' reported dispatch to the Pakistani capital as their own business. Okay, if it's our own business, that kind of indicates not a lot of progress in terms of reaching an agreement or some extension of the ceasefire or some agreement or some surrender, which is what President Trump, of course, would prefer. Vice President J.D. Vance plans to lead the U.S. delegation in Islamabad, but Reuters reported he will not be departing for Pakistan as of midday. The Speaker of Iran's parliament, Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf, who is the big cheese right now, the one who's visible because the new Ayatollah is just in some kind of hiding or seclusion. But Ghalibaf tweeted yesterday that Iran does not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats and warned that Iran does not accept negotiations that they have prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. To reveal new cards. What that means on the battlefield, no one knows. Meanwhile, at least 60 U.S. military veterans, including several visibly disabled former service members and military family members, were arrested yesterday in Washington, D.C., after staging a peaceful protest against the U.S. war against Iran. The veterans gathered inside the rotunda of the Cannon House office building at Capitol Hill, many dressed in military fatigues, the unfurled banners reading, "End the war on Iran," and "We can't afford another war," standing in formation as they carried out a sit-in in calling for an end to U.S. military involvement overseas. That's a striking new aspect of demonstrations. There's also this story, which is a big and important story today. This reported by AP. There are no candidates on the ballot in Virginia's special election. It's a statewide election over the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, and that election occurs today. And that contest could decide the closely divided U.S. House this fall. Now, how is that the case? It's because the whole purpose of the election is to see whether the voting public in the state of Virginia approves the redistricting that has been pushed through the legislature by the new Democratic majority in Virginia. Remember, they won fairly big in Virginia to elect Governor Spanberger, the new governor of Virginia, Democrat, to elect a Democratic majority in both houses of the Virginia legislature. And the voters in the Commonwealth will today decide a ballot measure that would amend Virginia's constitution to give the Democratic majority General Assembly temporary power to redraw the state's congressional districts. It's the latest move in an escalating redistricting arms race that began in July of last year, when Texas Republican lawmakers redrew their state's congressional map to favor Republicans at Donald Trump's urging. The redistricting battle reaches Virginia now as voters weigh a new congressional map. Now, Democrats had already won a fight like this in California that supposedly gives them a lock on 5 extra congressional seats in California, which is already overwhelmingly Democratic. Virginia's been closely divided. Virginia right now has 6 Democrats who represent the state in the House and 5 Republicans. So it's close. But if this new plan goes through, and today the voters are seeming to lean in that direction, if the new redistricting goes through, it will not only create a situation where the Democrats have an advantage, it would be almost an exclusive one-party state. The Democrats hold 6 of Virginia's 11 congressional seats right now, but the plan passed by the legislature in February and signed by the Democratic Governor Abigail Spanberger, if it is enacted, the party could gain the upper hand easily in 10 districts, the next pickup of 4 seats. That could be more than enough, with all the resignations and so forth, to give the Democrats a House majority. Meanwhile, information on crazed gunmen in the U.S. and in Mexico and more. A gunman honoring Hitler on Hitler's birthday. We'll get to that and more on the Medved Show. And here on the Michael Medved Show, the Washington Post is reporting that 2 U.S. Embassy officials who died in an automobile accident in northern Mexico as they returned from the scene of a counter-narcotic operation. Those embassy officials were actually agents for the Central Intelligence Agency, for the CIA, and they had been sent to Mexico as part of a significantly expanded role in battling narcotics trafficking in the Western Hemisphere. That, according to people familiar with the matter, talking to the Washington Post. The deadly car crash on Sunday in the state of Chihuahua also took the lives of 2 Mexican officials and prompted the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, to say she would investigate whether the operation ran afoul of the nation's national security laws. The other question is, these 2 Americans just lost their lives. Have they been making any real progress in their counter-narcotic work? Well, the New York Post is reporting that there was a crazed gunman who opened fire on tourists atop a pyramid at Mexico's famous Teotihuacan, it's always hard for me to pronounce, Teotihuacan ruins. The gunman who opened fire on tourists on top of that pyramid from the Mayan period was a Hitler fanatic. Hitler was not known to the Mayan civilization or the Aztec civilization, but yesterday was Hitler's birthday. And it's also the anniversary of the terrible Columbine High School shooting back in 1999. In any event, this fanatic who fired on tourists from the top of the pyramid also posed for pictures in the past showing Nazi salutes, Sieg Heil, and he was found with an AI-generated photo of himself standing with the Columbine High School shooters, according to local officials. The name of the crazy in Mexico was Julio Cesar Jasso. He killed a Canadian tourist and shot several others before he took his own life at the archaeological site near Mexico City yesterday. Yesterday was the 27th anniversary of the Columbine High School massacre and also Hitler's birthday. He left at the terror scene a bizarre AI-generated image of him posing with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the 2 friends who shot up the Colorado High School on April 20th, 1999, killing 14 people and themselves. That's what federal prosecutors told a Mexican outlet, Telediario. Meanwhile, in terms of mass shootings and closer to home, Shamar Elkins, who was 31 years old, killed 8 children in Louisiana. That's 7 of those children his own, and one of them a nephew, not a child. So you're talking about all in the family, 1 nephew and 7 children of the killer. He also injured 2 women in a Louisiana domestic rampage, with investigators mapping his social media now to, quote, show a disturbing digital trail that masked his rage. Hours before the shooting, he posted a photo with a victim, and earlier posts showed firearms and hints of distress. Probably more than just hints. The key details in the Washington Post regarding this social media investigation, the final actions hours before the shootings, which began around 5 a.m., had Elkins posting a photo on social media of himself with his oldest daughter. The digital persona versus reality. Investigators found that behind a social media persona as a doting father, Elkins was masking immense rage. And warning signs. Previous social media activity included content displaying firearms and expressing anger related to personal domestic issues. And the background, Shamar Elkins, the killer, who was shot by law enforcement authorities, or he may have ended up shooting himself. He's dead in any event. But Elkins was a former Louisiana National Guard member from 2013 until 2020. And he had a 2019 conviction for a weapons charge. I am sure we will hear more about this case as it emerges. The BBC is reporting that a woman and a child jumped from a rooftop to escape the mass shooting in Louisiana, where authorities say a father fatally shot 8 children, including 7 of his own. The official said they were alerted to the gun attack in the city of Shreveport at 5:55 Central Daylight Time. The caller reported they were on top of the house while the suspect remained with weapons inside the house. Police did not identify the survivors or disclose their connection to the attacker, but said both were in stable condition. These are the people who had to jump from the ceiling, from the roof of this building. Police did not identify the survivors, and the suspect, the killer, died following a gun battle with officers, though it remains unclear whether he took his own life or was killed by the police. 2 adult women, including the children's mother, were also hurt by gunfire, and both were recovering in hospital, police said. A 9th child, which is new, was taken to the hospital after jumping from the roof of the home while escaping. Among the 8 children killed in the shooting, siblings and 1 cousin were 3 boys and 5 girls. They ranged in age from 3 years old, the oldest of them, the oldest daughter, who had her picture taken with her father less than 24 hours before her killing. The oldest daughter was 11. That according to the Caddo Parish Coroner's Office. Speaking about danger and disillusionment, there is new national polling data on President Trump that is astonishing. We will get to that and to more coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, there is new polling data almost every day. Because we are in an election year. The midterm election comes up in November. It's a big election taking place, special election in the state of Virginia today, and that a lot of people are saying that this Virginia vote, if it goes, as most recent votes have gone, in a Democratic direction, that will signify a potential wipeout kind of midterm election for President Trump. There's also a brand new poll from American Research Group, which shows that the Trump job approval and the national economy, his ratings on handling of the national economy, it's all a disaster. The total of 32% of Americans, less than a third, say they approve of the way Donald Trump is handling his job as president. 63% say they disapprove of the way Trump is handling his job. That according to the latest survey released today from American Research Group. Back in March, he still wasn't high, but he was higher. He has been going down. In March, he had 34%, not 32%, who approve of his handling of his job. When it comes to the handling of just the economy, it's even worse. 31% of Americans approve and 65% disapprove. That's more than 2 to 1 who disapprove of the way the President of the United States is handling our national economy, which is, of course, a crucial issue for the American voters and for the way that we all live. Now, among Americans registered to vote, are things better for Trump or even worse? The answer is it's even worse. Because among Americans who are registered to vote, 32% approve of the way Trump is handling his job, 64% disapprove. Exactly 2 to 1 ratio of people who disapprove as to people who approve. On handling of the economy, 65% disapprove. It's almost 2/3 who disapprove of the way Trump is handling things. Now, the reason this is so dramatic is if you look back on previous off-year elections, at this time in April of 2018, which was the first midterm election that Trump faced, and for people who choose not to remember that election, that was a Republican catastrophe. The Republicans lost control of the House. They lost 40 seats, 40. This time they need the Republicans to lose only 4, not 40. But back in April of 2018, there was better ratings for Trump prior to the Republican wipeout that year than there are right now for the President of the United States. There's much, much more of this, but it's all negative. And partially it's negative because of the way that Trump comes across and puts himself across. He made a call to a Washington area radio station to talk about the Virginia election because, of course, Virginia, a big part of Virginia picks up Washington media. So he called into a local radio station to complain about the special election that is being held today in Virginia to actually redistrict things in the Old Dominion state, to redistrict things to give the Democrats an even bigger advantage than they have right now in terms of congressional seats in Virginia. It could give the Democrats 10 out of the 11 seats in the House of Representatives for this special election. Here is President Trump with his reaction to that very serious for him prospect in the election today. This is clip 88.
Tell you, we have Mike Johnson's done a great job there, but we're always fighting against the one thing the Democrats do, they stick together, even on really horrible policy. I always say they have horrible policy, but they stick together. They impeached me, and they had no right to impeach me.
Right.
And they did it like nobody even knew it was going to happen. Well, it's terrible. It is true, John. It's nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's so unfair. They even say it's unfair. They say, oh, they'll do it once, and maybe they'll go back to what it was. The whole thing is ridiculous, and she's been a horrible governor. Look at all the problems that we've got with her. The whole country is talking about it, actually, and I guess she goes down as the worst governor for the first short period of time ever. But she's totally different. She said she was going to be a moderate. She wasn't going to raise taxes. And literally in her first day, she wiped out all of the good that was done by your excellent governor. Glenn did a great job. He was a great governor. And she just wiped it out. And not only wiped it out, she put taxes on every single item. You cut your lawn, you wash your laundry. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. She went absolutely bonkers.
Okay, speaking of going absolutely bonkers, What is he talking about? He's talking about Abigail Spanberger, who's the newly elected Democratic governor of Virginia. And she has not been governor long enough to achieve all this destruction that President Trump is outlining here, because she just won a couple of weeks ago. And to suggest that she has all of a sudden made such a disaster in the state of Virginia and the Old Dominion state, well, he went on and talked about what he believes will happen if the Democrats in Virginia follow the example of the Republicans down in Texas with this redistricting to their advantage in a state that right now they control. Here is President Trump on what would happen if the Democrats do win today.
They get additional House seats. At some point, if they get these additional seats, they're going to be making changes at the federal level. So I cut taxes more than anybody's ever cut them. They will change that. So they wanted to raise taxes. They wanted to raise regulations. They want to have men and women sports. They want to have a transgender mutilization of your children for everybody. It's a mutilization of your children. They want to have every single thing that you don't want. What's going to happen if we lose these elections, the House, and in this case, the House, and just it's going to be a disaster. If they do this, they're guaranteed to pick up a lot of seats. And everybody knows it's unjust.
And it's going to lead to mutilization. I think the word he was looking for is mutilation, maybe. But again, if they vote on a different apportionment scheme for the congressional delegation from Virginia, that leads directly to mutilization, as President Trump would put it, of your children. That's the dubious connection. Coming up, speaking of a dubious connection, there is a big push on the left for safe drug sites. This is supposed to be part of the war against destructive drugs, but there's actual data that's available that shows that safe drug sites aren't safe. Why not? We'll be speaking coming up to Dr. Kevin Sabet, anti-drug crusader, who's been a guest on this show many times. Coming up again on safe drug sites on the Michael Medved Show.
Sign up today for our free weekly newsletter at michaelmedved.com.
Here's an amazing number to consider. The nearly 1 million people over the past decade have died of drug overdoses in this country. That's amazing and horrible. So what do you do about it? Now, some people on the left in particular have felt that the answer is safe drug sites, having a situation where you have supervisors and a place where people can go to use their drugs under supervision, where they have counteracting medication that is available to them, to get this all under government sponsorship. So how's that working out? Well, terribly. Washington Post piece, a very powerful piece on safe drug sites. It's co-written by Dr. Kevin Sabet, who's been a guest on this show before. Also a guest on the show is Luke Niforatos, who serves as the executive vice president of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, and is widely recognized as one of the nation's leading drug policy experts. Luke, what's wrong with this concept of safe consumption sites as a way for battling the fatal nature of drug overdoses?
Yeah, well, right out the gate, it's an anachronism. You're saying how can we use drugs safely? Well, drugs are inherently unsafe. So we're getting started on the wrong foot just right out the gate with a term like that they are using for these sites. And so what it comes down to is it's enablement of drug use. It's enablement of people who are in the throes of a horrible and deadly disease of addiction. They're addicted to fentanyl. They're addicted to xylazine. They're addicted to all of these highly potent, awful drugs that are out there right now. Drugs have only gotten more dangerous, not less dangerous, and there's no way to safely use drugs. There are those, though, that say, well, maybe what we do is we just take these things called injection sites or safe consumption sites, and these are places where we will allow the drug users to go, and they can inject drugs or take drugs under the supervision of clinicians. And if they overdose, they will get their overdose reversed by something like naloxone. And so the theory is if we just get everybody who is in the throes of horrible addiction to fentanyl and all these other crazy drugs to only use their drugs in a site under medical supervision, then we can, save all these lives. And if it sounds too good to be true, that's because it is. Unfortunately, it is only serving to enable drug users. It's making the drug dealers actually come out and start dealing open air drug markets around these injection sites. It's causing crime to go up. So the op-ed gets into it. It's a great piece by our CEO, Dr. Kevin Sabet. But we also, at our organization, if you go to gooddrugpolicy.org, put out a white paper on this subject. And you can check that out. There's a lot of information now on injection sites, the crime they cause, and how they actually don't help drug users.
Okay, at these safe consumption sites, so-called, that aren't safe, as you make the point, who pays for it? Who pays for the experts, the supervisors who are supposed to be supervising the drug use in these locations?
Great questions. Well, we know where there's certain camp of folks in this country where they'd love this to go is that it's all taxpayer funded. That's where this is headed. It's not taxpayer funded right now, though, because it's totally illegal. So under the Crack House statute, these sites are illegal under federal law. But what we are seeing is in New York City, they have been given a sanction to be allowed to operate. I believe they're privately funded by organizations with ties to George Soros, of course. This is one of his top priorities, is to see drug consumption normalized and people able to use, quote unquote, safely at sites like this. Also, outside of New York City, we're now going to start seeing them in Rhode Island, because actually Rhode Island state legislature authorized these sites statewide. And they are, for now, privately funded. And so when they put this out, they did this, they passed the law, and they looked at who wanted to fund it, and it was Open Society Foundation, which, of course, is George Soros's top nonprofit funder. So Soros is written all over this, and a lot of the money right now is coming from these private dark money NGOs. But obviously the idea here, especially with them getting legislatures to authorize this at the state level, even though it's federally illegal, the idea here is they want this stuff to be federally funded by taxpayers. That's where this is going.
Okay, obviously George Soros has a history of being a major funder before he even was involved deeply in politics, a major funder of drug legalization. You think that George Soros is celebrating all the impact of marijuana legalization, for instance?
Absolutely. I mean, he was one of the top funders of all the marijuana ballot legalization measures, to the tune of tens of millions of dollars into these ballot measures. It's interesting now, though, because what's happened is George Soros's money made most of the state legalization efforts happen over the last 10 years. But now what we've seen is he has created Leviathan. He has created this big marijuana industry that is worth nearly $40 billion now. The industry doesn't need him anymore. So George Soros has, he wants to see legalization and drug use everywhere, but he has notions also of racial justice and equity and things of that nature. But Leviathan, this industry he's created, has zero interest in racial equity, zero interest in social justice. So they have totally taken off. They have all the money they need. They don't need his money anymore. And so now it's all about industry, addiction, profit, and all the ideas of racial equity are long gone. And by the way, that was the idea with these social consumption sites as well, is this idea of serving underserved communities. Well, they took the first injection sites or social consumption sites and put them in Harlem. They targeted the underserved communities right out the gate. They didn't want people using drugs and shooting up in their neighborhood, but all the white and rich communities didn't want it there, so they put it in the black communities and in the poorer parts. And those communities stood up and were begging the Trump administration to do something about this because they didn't want it in their neighborhood, and that continues to be a fight right now. So it's certainly achieving his ends.
What do you say, Luke, to the argument that holds that getting people to use marijuana recreationally is far safer than them using fentanyl or cocaine or other substances? So these safe consumption sites actually can help by scaling down more, quote, innocent drugs like the very popular weed instead of fentanyl and other alternatives.
Well, that's just, folks who think that you can take one drug and replace it with another. That's just very foolish. There's no science that supports that. In fact, most people that start using marijuana then go on to use these quote unquote harder substances. You look at 97% of heroin users began with marijuana as their drug of choice. And the idea that you can then take something like fentanyl and then replace it with marijuana or any other substance for that matter, totally not supported in the literature. And again, if we have it really comes down to the paradigm. Are we a society that is going to encourage drug use and make drug use easy? Or are we a society that is going to discourage drug use and make it very difficult and uncomfortable for folks with addiction to continue to sustain that addiction? And I think we should be the latter. And the reason why is because when you have someone who is completely, totally addicted using 20 tabs of fentanyl a day, which so many of them across the country, that's what this is looking like. They're consuming massive amounts of fentanyl per day. They've built up that tolerance. They're going to seek to sustain that addiction every which way they can because their brain has been totally hijacked. We have to make it as uncomfortable for them as possible to keep that addiction going. That is the only way to save their lives. There needs to be law enforcement. There needs to be healthcare, needs to work together. We need to get them into treatment, and we need to make it very hard for them to not be in treatment. Because otherwise, if we make this easy, we're going to have a lot more people that die from overdose, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
I know that in your article you mention that the Biden administration was very supportive of the safe injection sites, the supervised injection sites. Has the Trump administration followed that pattern?
So Biden was, I think, initially had some hand-wringing, but actually came around at the end. They actually came against the injection site that was being proposed in Philadelphia. So thankfully, I think they're better angels. They heard from them. But the Trump administration just did an executive order a few months ago that said that the crack house statute needs to be enforced specifically against people operating injection sites. So I think we will see some enforcement soon. There's only a few of them in the country so far. But the Trump administration did come down directly on them with a recent executive order. So we'll see.
I'm very glad to hear that. Speaking with Luke Niforatos, who is the Executive Vice President of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, and is widely recognized as one of the nation's leading drug policy experts. And you can see why listening to him. You can find out more from the Smart Approaches to Marijuana, an alliance of organizations and individuals dedicated to a health-first approach to drug policy. We will do more to apply logic and common sense to this greatest nation on God's green earth.